finding something that has a high need to be solved, and you talk a little bit about the status quo could be one of your alternatives. How do you approach that with clients? Do you have an example maybe of going through the process and really vetting out a pain point with some customer research and what you discovered after that process with the client?
Yes, I have an example that comes to mind. It's a maybe not one that you'd think is really directly related to most like startups, for example, but actually it is. I think it's kind of an issue and a way that many both startups and larger companies could approach this. I've seen it work really very well with a almost $2 billion client of ours that is that basically manufactures materials, just to simplify it, make it more simple. They have an innovation group, and the innovation team in this company constantly develops new materials. They have a large portfolio of really amazing new materials with properties that are, outstanding. The number of applications, even for just one of these, is just amazing. The question is, how do you know which one to take to market? And from really the very early technology readiness level, like even from stage 1, 2, 3, and then push them. Which one should you push towards the 4 or 5, and further down? And so the way that it was done is by applying a process of product market alignment analysis and product market fit, with directly interviewing potential users, the engineers, the design engineers in those potential targeted sectors, and are multiple, and presenting at least even the concept of those technologies, and making them brainstorm and project themselves in the future, if they could see themselves using it, how, why not, and get, and they are exposed to, of course, all the other materials out there. So it's a very rich type of data, and then trying to be more systematic though, so putting all that within the framework of what we were and not the only ones, but at least between us, we were referring that as a heat map, and that helped to in transforming all that data into actually quantified scores with some pretty simple formulas, but still rigorously used. We could represent visually with even color codes where were the hotspots. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, very good. And it sounds as though that what I'd call user experience testing, which was very thorough and robust. What was the end result? How did that help the company guide toward successful launch of the product?
So it helped them shortlist a few applications, a few technologies for a few applications, and then to help make a final decision, there was a need for a few additional representations, like on other dimensions, such as the feasibility, the speed to market, the barriers to entry, a number of other elements that we helped them run, and then they selected one that turned out to be a big winner. And they needed something. They were saying that it is, for them, anything that is less than $50 million just doesn't move the needle, right, in terms of annual revenue. So that was the minimum, and the one that they selected was way more than that. I think it's partly because of the result of this process, and because the market has shifted dramatically in a way that we kind of could anticipate, but not as we didn't imagine it going even as large as that. And but they were prepared, meaning that if they hadn't made that decision to invest in that specific product, they wouldn't have been able to position themselves on that market. It's become an enormous market.
Yeah, well, I think you bring up the some of the challenges and the benefits of innovating in a corporation. So fortunately, this organization, through your guidance, was able to follow a robust process. Not every corporation does that. Sometimes people fall in love with their new idea and take it to market without the proper kind of market fit vetting. But then you also bring up another parameter, which is that in a corporation, you are going to have other constraints, requirements, revenue requirements, and so you've also got to do that inside fit. You have to look at the external environment and do that fit, but then you have to make sure that you have that inside fit. So I think that's an additional requirement that perhaps de novo or startup innovators don't necessarily have to grapple with.
That's right, yes. And they were very good at getting all their teams involved, and from the very beginning of the process, it wasn't just a commission study and when we come back with a result. There's a lot of back and forth, and then even the team within the innovation group, they were checking with all their other stakeholders internally. So that helped create that commitment from everybody, and so that they were ready to move when the decision was made. It's true that also it helps avoid this getting this syndrome of getting enamored with just one idea somehow, and that happens probably less when you have many stakeholders involved. It makes it a bit more complicated. It was a long process, but I think that the end result was worth it. In startups, you see exactly that. I know exactly what you're referring to. These companies that where the decision making is maybe centralized enough that if that person or that small group of people are biased, it could be a winner. But if not, then that's a lost opportunity.